Okay, we are working off of this worksheet, practice quiz number 1 for section 4.1 and 4.2. And we're actually going to turn to the back side of this worksheet. And we're going to work on the last 9 questions right over here. When it says to evaluate, I'm going to write that over here. If it tells you to evaluate, what you want to think about doing is to plug and chug. And when you plug and chug, we do PEMDAS. So plug and PEMDAS is what you should remember, just like this. Okay, and I like to write PEMDAS just like this, and that's going to be the most effective way for me to do PEMDAS. And just a little reminder for PEMDAS, when you multiply and divide, they're next to each other, because if we see both those operations in a problem, I want to work left to right. And the same for addition and subtraction. If I see adding maybe after subtracting, I'm going to do subtracting first, then adding, working again left to right, if I only see adding and subtracting at that point in the question. So here we go, number 1. I'll just start with number 1, and then I'm going to pick a few that are probably a little more difficult. I'm just going to take m to the 4th power, and because m is equal to 5, that's what I would plug into n. If I am plugging anything in, here's a key thing that you should do. If I plug any number in, and if it's negative, then what I should do is put it in a parentheses. Okay, that's going to help me know when the answer might be negative or positive, and it may change depending on the parentheses or not. Something we talked about in class about the importance of the parentheses around the negative number, especially when we're working with exponents. So with number 1, 5 is a m and 5 is a positive, so I could just write 5 to the 4th power. That's the same as saying 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. And go ahead and work that out yourself. I'm not going to spend much time more on this, but the answer for number 1 is going to be 625. And remember, the strategy that you should work here when multiplying numbers in the exponent is you should actually take the number and go ahead and do the pair them up. Pair 25 times 25, and then get your answer 625, just like that. All right, I'm actually going to erase this space here for every question that I do. So if you ever need to look back to the question or pause, then go ahead and do that in the video. Number 3, I want to do number 3. Number 3 is a little tricky. When you see a negative on the outside of the parentheses, please keep the negative on the outside and then work it out as you would using PEMDAS. So here I rewrote the question. I'm taking the 7 and I'm replacing it with P just right there like that. So according to PEMDAS, I would first do the parentheses, and so inside the parentheses would give me the answer 14. I'm going to keep that 14 in the parentheses, the negative on the outside, and then my exponent is still 2 over here. And according to PEMDAS, E would be the next part of PEMDAS, so I'm going to take 14 and square that, which means I'm squaring 14. So because the positive 14 is in the parentheses, that is what I am repeating. I am repeating 14 times 14. The negative, what do I do with that? Because it's on the outside of the parentheses, I'm going to keep that negative on that outside, just like that. So then I'm going to, on the side, do 14 times 14. The answer that I'm going to get is 196, and I'm not going to work that problem, the multiplying out for you. I'm going to get 196, and then the negative on the outside would mean that the negative is going to be a part of the answer, negative right there. And so if you see a negative on the outside of the parentheses, you're going to go ahead, work out the problem, and then at the end, put the negative in your answer. So for number 3 is negative 196. All right, for number 4, if you notice, there's also a negative there, and you don't happen to see a parentheses. However, because the parentheses is not around the negative, we do consider number 4 very similar to number 3, where the negative is actually outside of the n, which is being going to the power of 6. So because n is equal to 2 and 2 is positive, I'm not going to do this statement here, which is to put it in the parentheses. So I'm just going to write 2 to the 6th power, and I'm going to keep that negative again, like on the outside. So if the negative's on the outside of the parentheses, you do keep that on the outside. If you don't see a parentheses around it, you would assume that it's also on the outside. Okay, so in this question, I'm repeating 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, giving me the answer 64, and then that negative on the outside, I would attach it to the answer, and that would be my final answer for number 4, negative 64. Okay, now let's explore number 5, because here we're going to start to get a little bit tricky. Number 5, you will see that b is going to go to the 6th power. And what is b here? Well, they gave you that b is negative 1. Well, since I'm going to plug in, I'm going to do a plug and chug. If it's negative, then I'm going to put it in a parenthesis. So I'm going to take the negative 1, put it into a parenthesis, and then take it to the 6th power. So what this question is telling me, different from 3 and 4, is that that negative 1 is going to be repeated 6 times. So negative 1 will repeat multiplying 6 times. That's what exponents tell me to do. So I'm going to take negative 1 times 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 negative 1. And let's just say the negatives weren't there. What is 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1? Anything times 1 basically is itself. So after multiplying all of that, I can pair them up, and what you'll see me do is get positive 1, positive 1, positive 1. If I keep multiplying the positives 1 with one another, my final answer is going to lead me to 1 times 1, which is really just 1. So my answer for number 5 is going to be 1. Right there, just like that. All right, we're going to work on number 7. I'm going to skip number 6, but if you want to know the answer, here it is, and you may pause the video anytime you need to. Make sure you work it out to get the answer. Number 6 is 729. Number 7 here, I'm going to take the parentheses 6 plus h squared, and I'm going to, whatever I get for that, then at the end, I will square it. Okay, so here h is equal to 3, so I'm going to plug it, and because 3 is positive, I don't need to put that in parentheses, so I'm going to rewrite the question. I'm going to write 6 plus, and I'm plugging in 3, I'm squaring that, parentheses, and then a squared at the end. Okay, so I'm going to work out parentheses. So in the parentheses, I need to follow PEMDAS. So once I get in the parentheses, I still need to follow PEMDAS. So right now, in the parentheses, I'm going to follow PEMDAS. So in the parentheses, there is no p, so I can skip that step. Exponents, there are exponents there. So 3 to the 2nd power is going to give me 9. Then I'm going to add 6 in the parentheses still, which is going to give me 15. So 15 in the parentheses, I'm going to then take that and square it. That squared on the outside of the big parentheses is really squaring whatever answer I get on the inside of the parentheses. So 15 squared, I'm going to multiply that together, and the answer that I should get is this answer right here. Very good if you got 225 for number 7. I actually want to work out number 8 and 9 with you too, as it seems those are also two pretty difficult questions for some of us. And really the main thing that we need to remember is to follow PEMDAS, and it would be very important and crucial for you if you would write out PEMDAS when you get to a question that you need to use PEMDAS. It's going to really make sure that your work is going in the right direction. Number 8, I'm going to rewrite the question by plugging in that number of -4. And because it's a negative, I will write a parenthesis. So this is going to help me organize my information. So I'm going to take parentheses -4. I'm squaring it, plus 3, and then parentheses times the -4. So -4 goes in there. And then minus 7. According to PEMDAS, I will do parentheses, and there are parentheses there, but there's nothing in the parentheses for me to do, so I'm going to go and skip to exponents. There are exponents right here, and that's negative 4 times negative 4, which is 16. Then I'm going to add 3, times it with negative 4, and then subtract 7. So that was the exponent step right there. Then I'm going to do multiplying and dividing. Here I do see a multiplying, no dividing, so I will go ahead and multiply. Right here will give me negative 12, so 16 plus negative 12 minus 7. Then I'm going to get to the last step, which is adding and subtracting in PEMDAS. I'm going to do adding and subtracting, and you know, really, when I get to adding and subtracting, I could use my T for teams chart. The teams, okay. T for teams. And that's going to help me actually work out the question. So when I do T for teams, I'm going to place 16 in the positive, 12 in the negative, 7 in the negative, giving me 19 for the negative, and the positives have 16. So my final answer when I subtract the two numbers is 3. So 3, the negative wins. So my final answer will be negative 3. That's number 8. Number 9. This time I'm going to plug in 5. And again, feel free to pause the video anytime to work out the question before I explain it. Y is 5, so I'm going to take 5, and it says cubed, so I'm going to cube it. Minus 2 times 5, square it, plus 3 times 5 minus 4. This time I chose to use dots for multiplying when I replace the y with a 5. In PEMDAS, I start with P. No parentheses I see, so skip that. I do see exponents, so I'm going to work out both exponents first, that 5 and that 5 over here. This is 5 times 5 times 5. And that's giving me an answer of 125. Then I'm going to subtract 2 times, and when I get 5 times 5 over here, I get 25. Then I'm going to add 3 times 5 and minus the 4 later. Now I'm going to do multiplying and dividing, and there happens to be 2 parts that I can multiply here. So in the same step, I will multiply them both together. So I'm going to do multiplying. 2 times 5 is 50. 3 times 5 is 15. Then I'm going to bring every number down, 125, the minus sign, the addition sign, the minus sign, and then the 4. Now I'm going to work out the problem here where I would do adding and subtracting, and I see both adding and subtracting, so I'm going to work left to right, or what would be even better is to use T for teams. So what you'll notice is when I do PEMDAS, when you get to the last part of adding and subtracting, you can use T for teams. That's going to be the easiest way to make sure that we do get the correct answer. I'm going to get a little more space here. 125, and or I could work left to right if we want to do that. We can subtract these two, get 75, add 15, then subtract 4 and work left to right, add 75 with 15 and get 90, subtract the 4 and then get our final answers, which is 86. Or if you use T for teams, you put 125 positive, 50 is negative, 15 is positive, and 4 is negative. So when I do it that way, I get 54 for the negative team, add up the total for the positive team, which is 140, and then to figure out who wins and by how many points did that winning team beat the losing team by, I would then take the difference and subtract them. I would still get 86, and because the positive team won, then my answer will be a positive 86 and not a negative 86. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and go back up to the page right here where I will fill out the answer 86, and you can look at the answers. And let me give you the answers in number 2 so that you are able to double check all that. And any more questions you have in on this worksheet, please ask Mrs. Zhu in class the day before you take the quiz.